ISKCON Samstapatacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jaya Shri Prabhupada Samstapatacharya Srila Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Namacharya Sri Maharaja Ki Jai. Prema Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamananda Radha Jai. Vrindavan Jai. Navadvip Jai. Jamuna Mai Jai. Ganga Mai Jai. Tulsi Devi Jai. Bhakti Devi Jai. Samvete Bhakti Jai. Nitai Gaur all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glories to Sri Guru. To give some background, I'll read a little from chapter 1 on to India, August, October 1970, from my forthcoming book about travel with Srila Prabhupada in India, before June. In August 1970, Srila Prabhupada announced that he was going to India. When he was asked why, when his Guru Maharaj ordered him to preach in the West, he replied, I have already done that. Spread Krishna consciousness in America. Now I want to revive the spiritual culture of India. Of course, practically all the devotees wanted to join Prabhupada, including me. But in the end, he asked that each of our 14 temples or so in America send the best man they could spare, generally the second in command. And I was chosen to go from Boston. Somehow, I got the distinct feeling that Lord Jagannath was sending me. And Rukmini Devi, the temple pujari, told me that too. That she thought I was being sent by Lord Jagannath. I was astonished by her comment and felt that my intuition had been confirmed. So now, chapter 2, Amritsar, October 20 to 30. We began our stay in India at the home of Kailash Seksaria, a Marwari businessman who had a 5-story building overlooking the sea on Bombay's prestigious Marine Drive. I was dancing very enthusiastically in kirtans during that time, making a special effort to jump as high as I could in the air and to sustain my efforts from the beginning to the end. One evening, Srila Prabhupada called for me. He had never done so. I didn't have any business with him as such. I was just one of the devotees. And I took it that he was reciprocating with my dancing. After we had been in Bombay for 10 days, Srila Prabhupada's old friend, Hari Krishna Das Agarwal, invited Prabhupada and his party to Amritsar for a Vedanta Sammelan conference, at which people would gather to hear sadhus speak on or speculate about Vedanta. Prabhupada accepted, and on October 20th, he and our party of disciples, 7 men and 2 women, Gurudas, Yamuna, Kaushalya, Devananda, Revatinandan, Nandakumar, Gopal, Bhakta Bruce, later Bhanuswami, and I were on a train headed north to Amritsar. En route, the train stopped at Kurukshetra. Prabhupada said, "Now here, Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. They say that Kurukshetra does not exist, that it is a mythological place, a symbol of the field of the body and senses. But here we are at the station. How can they say that Kurukshetra is not a real place? Here it is before us, and it has been a historical place for a long, long time." When the train arrived in Amritsar, Hari Krishna Das Agarwal personally received Prabhupada and took him and a few disciples in his car to another gentleman's house, where Prabhupada spoke a little and was served refreshments. And from there, Prabhupada went to the ashram where the Vedanta Sammelan would take place. Srila Prabhupada was not at the Pandau when a few devotees and I arrived. So the devotees asked that one of us speak, and I stepped forward. I had been feeling somewhat underused, that I could do some of the service the leading devotees were doing, maybe even better. I didn't desire more prominence, and I had faith that when Krishna wanted Srila Prabhupada to see my potential, he would let him know. But I felt I could do more, and now was my opportunity. I spoke about Lord Chaitanya's meeting with Prakashananda Saraswati in Benares, how he was criticized for chanting and dancing like a sentimentalist when he should have been studying and discussing Vedanta. And when the next morning Srila Prabhupada spoke in Hindi on the same pastime, I felt that my choice of topic had been inspired by Krishna. The Vedanta ashram was dedicated to the propagation of impersonal Mayavad philosophy, and the buildings and walkways displayed signs with popular Mayavadi slogans such as Tattvamasi, you are that. When a devotee asked Srila Prabhupada about it all, Prabhupada explained that the ashram residents were impersonalists, that their idea of Vedanta was impersonal. He said, quote, "They know that I disagree with them, and still they have invited me because they want to see the white elephants, us, dance." He was fully aware that the organizers expected that his foreign disciples' kirtan would attract bigger crowds. Prabhupada continued, "They will talk and talk about Vedanta, but it is simply mental speculation, and they never come to any conclusion." Just then, one of the devotees removed the food offering from Prabhupada's deity's altar and put the plate in front of him. Prabhupada said, "They will go on speculating for many lifetimes." And then he popped a maha sweet into his mouth, and he said, "But we will realize God simply by eating." As it turned out, all the Mayavadis claiming, "I am God, you are God, everyone is God," couldn't hold the attention of the public. So every evening the organizers would beg us to come to the pandal, though we were always reluctant to go, as we knew we'd have to sit and listen to so many Mayavadis giving boring speeches in Hindi. Guru Das commented that the Mayavadis said they were God, but they had to come begging to the devotees of God to perform kirtan. We had been assigned 3 small rooms for quarters. Prabhupada took one, Yamuna and Kaushalya shared the second, and 4 of the men squeezed into the third, leaving 3 men, including me, to sleep on cots outdoors. One night it was so cold outside that we couldn't sleep. So the ashram managers said we could stay in a large hall with the visiting Mayavadis. But when Guru Das and I went there to sleep, we didn't feel comfortable. It was nice to stay in a big Indian ashram, which we had never done. So many beds in neat rows, one after the other. But everyone else staying there were Mayavadis. Guru Das later recounted, quote, "One of the sadhus came over to me and said, 'We are all God, just like the sparks of the fire and the fire are one.' I answered," that means Guru Das, "They are similar, and the sparks have the quality of the fire, but not the quantity. Just like we have some of the qualities of God, but not the quantity that He has. We are qualitatively similar, but not quantitatively equal to God. We can't cook a meal with a spark." The sadhu wouldn't give up, and he pressed his point. He took a thread from his blanket and said, "See, this thread is the same as the blanket." This is again Guru Das speaking. Krishna from within inspired me. I took away his blanket and gave him the thread. If they are the same, then this thread should keep you as warm as the blanket. I rolled up his blanket and used it as a pillow. It was very cold, and after an hour or so of shivering, the sadhu came back to me. He said, "You have proven your point. The thread is not the same as the blanket. I prostrate myself before you. You have defeated me." I replied, "Do not bow down before me. Bow before my Guru who has taught me." And the next morning, the sadhu went to Prabhupada and bowed before him. Nearby was a large vacant ground where a huge panda was constructed every year for the Vedanta Sammelan. At the end of the panda was a stage where Srila Prabhupada, or whoever the speaker was, would sit, and where we would stand and perform kirtan. At 4 o'clock the first morning, and every morning thereafter, we congregated in Srila Prabhupada's room for Mangal Arati and Kirtan in front of his small Radha Krishna deities. We felt fortunate to have such intimate association with our spiritual master. Prabhupada played mridanga and led the chanting of the Guruvastaka. Afterwards, he had the pujari distribute to each devotee a bit of the fruit and sweets that had just been offered to the deities. Then he had us read from Srimad Bhagavatam. Generally, when we were with Srila Prabhupada, we would have our right hand in our bead bags, so we could use every moment for chanting. One morning, a devotee asked, "Our right hand is in our bead bag every moment for chanting. Is it all right to accept the prasad in our left hand and pop it in our mouth?" Srila Prabhupada, always practical, replied, "Yes, you can take the shortcut." Later that morning at the Sammelan, Prabhupada spoke in Hindi to thousands of attendees. Everyone loved his address, and the committee members honored him by making him the president of the event. The program was scheduled to run for several hours in the morning and evening, but Prabhupada did not limit his preaching to those times, as a constant stream of visitors came to meet him in his room, seeking his blessings. He told us, "Just see how they treat a saintly person," appreciating this vestige of Vedic culture. There were morning and evening sessions. Guru Das, our main preacher, gave the evening lectures, and I spoke in the mornings, when there were fewer people. One evening, to refute the impersonal philosophy, Guru Das told the audience, "If it is all one, then why don't you give me your wife to enjoy?" And this example offended the Indians' sensibilities. The organizers asked Prabhupada to assign another disciple to speak in the evenings, and Prabhupada chose me. Each night, I would pray that my words would be pleasing to Prabhupada. I knew that if he was pleased, Krishna would be pleased, and that the audience would progress in Krishna consciousness. And I would pray to the Paramatma, the Lord within the hearts of all the people listening, to inspire them to receive my message, Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna's message, favorably. The morning after one of my talks, I had simply repeated what I had been reading in Srila Prabhupada's books about devotional service and the spiritual master. I happened to walk by Prabhupada, who was on the lawn outside his garden getting his massage. Prabhupada said, "I was hearing you speak this morning. You spoke very nicely." Actually, I had been wishing that he would take notice of my talks. I thought I knew this would happen. I knew that Krishna would arrange it. So I was quite happy. "Can I ask a question?" I requested. When Prabhupada approved, I asked, "How can we know when we feel that a voice is telling us something? How do we know whether it's the super soul or whether it is Maya?" Prabhupada replied, "Receiving direction from the super soul will come later. For now, it is best just to depend on the orders of the spiritual master." Prabhupada was more aware of our activities than I'd realized. Wherever we went, I carried the teachings of Lord Chaitanya with me. And every free moment I had, I read. I didn't think my practice caught Prabhupada's attention, but one day at a program he said, "Yes, Giriraj is trying very hard to understand our philosophy." And from his statement, I understood that he had noticed me reading his books and trying to understand the philosophy. In fact, he knew our natures, what we were doing, and everything about us, even things we wanted to hide. One of his servants, Devananda Swami, who had the habit of disappearing to secluded places to rest, could not be found one afternoon. Prabhupada said, "Well, don't worry, he's sleeping somewhere incognito." Many people extended invitations for Srila Prabhupada to visit their homes and factories and temples, and he accepted more than we thought possible. He had 5 or 6 programs almost every day, as many as 8. And in addition to doing some Harinam Sankirtan, we were constantly following him from one place to another. When the cars were ready to go to a program, he would come out and leave. Those who were not ready would have to catch up on bicycle rickshaws. So it was a mad rush. Sometimes we would lose track, make a wrong turn, and have to ask for directions. Sometimes we wouldn't reach a place until Prabhupada had begun preaching or was honoring prasad. Or, since he would go from one program directly to the next, sometimes we didn't reach until he had already left. At the end of the day, having spoken at 7 programs, from 7 in the morning until 11 at night, Prabhupada returned to the ashram by car, with the rest of us following on rickshaws. When we arrived, we were totally exhausted and ready to take rest. But noticing the light still on in Prabhupada's quarters, I went to the window and peeked in. And there was Prabhupada, sitting back on his asan, listening to the tape of the talk on Krishna that he had just given. He never tired of speaking or hearing about Krishna, or of glorifying him. The only problem was that none of us were able to keep up with Prabhupada's pace. We didn't have time to wash our clothes. We hardly had time to sleep. We were becoming more and more exhausted, and our physical and mental conditions was deteriorating. Most of us were barely a third of Prabhupada's age, but we just couldn't keep up. Yamuna Devi recalled, throughout our short stay in Amritsar, Srila Prabhupada exhibited superhuman energy, as though the mercy of Lord Nityananda became personified in him. Just imagine that his age was over 70, yet he went through his own morning program, then we had a group morning program, then there was the Pandal program with which Prabhupada attended, and then we would attend up to 5 engagements a day, often lasting until midnight or later. Sometimes Prabhupada did not even sleep, and we would all have to run to keep up with him. He was invited to many, many places, and he accepted almost all of them. So this preaching would just go on non-stop. And the energy that he had for preaching Lord Chaitanya's message of Krishna consciousness was just inconceivable. I can honestly say that at the age of 28 and at the zenith of my health, I struggled to keep up with him. Not only me, but all of us, men and women. So that was Yamuna Devi's recollection. And finally, on behalf of all of us, Guru Das appealed to Prabhupada to limit the programs to 2 a day. And sympathetic to how much we were struggling, Prabhupada agreed. But he was receiving so many invitations and was so merciful to the people who approached him and so eager to preach the glories of the Lord. Even after agreeing to the limit, he started accepting more again. And before long, the norm was back to 4 or 5 a day. Reading to Srila Prabhupada from his newly published Nectar of Devotion one morning, Yamuna paused to ask a question. She read, quote, "Ekadasi, which comes twice a month on the 11th day of the moon, both waxing and waning." She read, "On that day all the devotees remain fasting throughout the night and continuously chant the glories of the Lord." And she asked, "Should we observe Ekadasi like that?" "No," Prabhupada replied. "We have too much service to do for Krishna." Still, he said, Ekadasi is most auspicious and chanting is more effective. To a disciple who asked, "Should we chant 25 rounds on Ekadasi?" Prabhupada replied, "Why only 25 rounds? You should chant as many as possible." On October 23rd, Prabhupada wrote to Shamsundar and Tamal Krishna, who was the zonal secretary for India, quote, "I hope you and your good wives, as well as Srimati Saraswati," Saraswati was Shamsundar and Malati's daughter, who was about 3 years old then. "I hope you and your good wives, as well as Srimati Saraswati, are all well. I have safely arrived in Amritsar and are being very well cared for at the Vedanta Niketan. The people and also the sannyasis here are very much liking our Sankirtan movement. So things are going on nicely." Prabhupada was very protective of the women, and he had them ride to programs with him in his car. On the way to one engagement with Yamuna and Kaushalya, he mentioned that he needed new shoes. "Stop at the next Bata shoe store," he said. In the store, he told them, "You choose the shoes for me," and he sat down. So they looked around the store and found some white, crisscross plastic sandals that they thought would be just right. Each of them carried one shoe up to Prabhupada, and they slipped them on his feet. He smiled and asked, "Do you like them?" They responded, "Yes." "Then we will buy them." And he did. It was quite cold in Amritsar at that time of year, but a little warmer when the sun came out in the afternoon. And if there was free time then, Yamuna would chant japa in the courtyard. She would sit cross-legged, her back erect, and chant the Maha mantra with her eyes closed, non-stop. When she chanted, she told me, her ears and mind and heart would open up to the holy names, and she would just hear the sound, not even thinking that she was chanting the holy names or being aware that she was hearing, just fully absorbed in the sound. We aspire for that type of hearing of the holy names. Yamuna became quite famous and popular. She spoke forcefully and eloquently, led wonderful kirtans, played mridanga, and with her charming demeanor and open, heartfelt presentation of Krishna consciousness, was always able to stimulate the bhakti in people's hearts. Every morning and afternoon, throngs of people would come to the back of the ashram where we had our rooms, look in the windows, and ask for Yamuna. Finally, she got agitated. She was starting to feel like an animal on exhibit in the zoo. The people kept asking questions like, "What is your name? And where are you coming from?" "Why don't they ask questions about Krishna?" she exclaimed. On the 24th, Srila Prabhupada took us to Ram Tirtha Sarovara, the lake where the sage Valmiki had his ashram. We were all in a jubilant mood, excited to join our spiritual father and teacher on a transcendental field trip. We didn't yet know much about Lord Ramchandra or the place we were visiting, but when we got there, Prabhupada shared the story. There was no microphone and he spoke softly, so we had to listen closely as he told us about Lord Ram and how Lord Rama's wife and eternal consort Sita Devi was banished, and in her exile, pregnant and alone, she took shelter in the ashram of Valmiki, where the sage sang the Ramayana, the transcendental story of Lord Rama. As Prabhupada spoke, I felt that a door was opening to the spiritual world, which he was revealing. At another program, Hari Krishna Das Agarwal asked Srila Prabhupada about Krishna coming as Rama. Prabhupada replied that Krishna does not come as Rama, but that Krishna, Rama, and all of Krishna's incarnations are eternal. They always exist. It is like the sun, he said. In one place it is sunrise, in another 4 o'clock, and in another sunset. But the sun itself is always the same. Similarly, God always exists in his original form, Krishna, but also as Rama and his other incarnations. So we cannot properly say that Krishna comes as Rama. At a weekly meeting of the lawyers of Amritsar, Prabhupada pointed out to the group that being lawyers, they were required to follow the law and law books of the land. But further than that, he said, they should follow God's laws, which were found in the greatest spiritual law book of all time, the Bhagavad Gita. Quote, "Water the root of the tree," he explained, "and all the leaves and branches are nourished." The lawyers were very appreciative, and after the talk they asked questions and offered respects to Prabhupada by bowing down before him. But when Guru Das asked them if they had read the Manu Samhita, the law book of Manu, they all said no. Prabhupada whispered to him, "Lawyers without law books," pronouncing lawyers as liars. Oh yes, this part is very good. One of Prabhupada's invitations came from Baladev Indra Singh, a Kshatriya king and heir to one of the oldest, most prominent dynasties in Punjab. Maharaj Singh was a robust Punjabi Kshatriya with a full beard and turban wrapped around his head, and he carried himself with a confidence that belied his small stature. His estate was set on acres of farmland with a herd of cows. Hanging on the walls were ornate frames were 5-foot to 8-foot paintings of his ancestral family members. Corpulent warriors in ancient armor sat on top of caparisoned horses, that means decorated horses, or bejeweled men stared with proud visages in kingly attire and magnificent crowns. All wearing their ceremonial swords encrusted with gems, along with silk sashes, feathers, and peacock fans. Several of us had come earlier with Prabhupada's small deities to set up the program. It was our first experience with a Kshatriya, and we didn't know how Prabhupada would respond to Singh and the Kshatriya trappings of his palatial surroundings. But Prabhupada, when he came, was openly enthusiastic. The walls of the king's spacious dining room were adorned with the heads of animals he had killed, trophies of dead wild beasts, elephants, lions, tigers, and antelopes. But Prabhupada explained to us, Kshatriyas must hunt animals to practice how to kill people in battle. A Kshatriya's dharma is to fight, so they must practice by hunting. This is described in the Vedas. We are in the house of a real Kshatriya. Brought before the king's private trophy, the enormous head of a tiger, Prabhupada examined it closely and asked, "You have killed this?" "Yes," Singh replied. "The man-eater had killed many people in a nearby village, so I went and shot it." Prabhupada's eyes widened, and he turned to us. "Oh, very nice." When Singh brought in a big plate of boga and asked Prabhupada to make an offering, Prabhupada sang Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Boga Arati song, Bhaja Bhakata Vatsala Sri Gora Hari. He rarely sang bhajans or led kirtan, and the rest of us were merged in an ocean of bliss. I had a clear perception that Krishna was in fact with Prabhupada as his divine grace offered his heart along with the food. Sitting on the floor with Prabhupada above him in a chair, Mr. Singh confided that there was something troubling him. An astrologer had told him that in a previous life he had fought in the battle of Kurukshetra, but on the side against Krishna, and he was very worried about it. Prabhupada assured him that this was not possible. Everyone who was killed in the battle of Kurukshetra was liberated, he said. If you had actually been there, you would not still be in this material world. Singh couldn't quite grasp the point and wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or disappointed. But Prabhupada said, "That's all right, don't worry. Now you are a devotee of Krishna, everything is all right." And when Singh's son came in, Prabhupada opened his eyes wide and, relating to the king's Kshatriya spirit, said, "Oh, he looks just like Maharaj Parikshit." And when it was time to honor the rich, spicy Punjabi feast, the rest of us were a bit hesitant. But as Prabhupada calmly began to eat, we relaxed and joined him. Our host was completely charmed. He said that when he had extended his invitation, he'd been a little doubtful about us. But after speaking to Prabhupada for a few minutes, all of his suspicions had been removed. As was often the case, I was amazed and impressed by how perfectly Prabhupada could understand people's moods and reciprocate with them personally. And when he asked Maharaj Singh to join our life membership program, by which people would pay an amount and receive all of Prabhupada's books, a subscription to Back to Godhead magazine, and the facility to stay for free in our centers, Singh agreed without hesitation. The first and only life member we made in Amritsar. One afternoon, this is very interesting. One afternoon, Srila Prabhupada went to see the famous Har Mandir Sahib, the Sikh Golden Temple, the main Gurudwara, place of worship for Sikhs worldwide. The temple was surrounded by a holy water tank, Amrit Sarovara, after which the city of Amritsar was named. Guru Das recalled, there were not as many altars or as much decoration as Hindu temples. At the top was a room from which we could see in all directions, a vista of 360 degrees. In this room, a man was reading from the original manuscript of the Guru Granth Sahib, the sacred scripture that is divine revelation for Sikhs. This reading is performed non-stop, just like the 24-hour kirtans performed in Vrindavan. Our guide explained that there were 4 entrances to the temple, indicating that it was open to any class of person, and that the temple was maintained entirely by donations, mostly from Sikh businessmen. They took pride that no one in Amritsar need go hungry, and fed a sanctified meal of dal and chapatis to 10,000 people daily, all done by volunteers. Prabhupada observed their massive operation, watching one group of men rolling chapatis, flipping them through the air onto a giant tava, griddle, while another group turned the chapatis with long paddles, held them briefly over the hot coals, and placed them in neat stacks. This is how to distribute prasad, Prabhupada said. Spiritual communism. When we are about to leave, Prabhupada had us all gather round as he signed the guest book. They had a guest book and they wanted all the visitors to sign it and make some comments. When we were about to leave, Prabhupada had us all gather around as he signed the guest book, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Under religion, he wrote, you'll never guess. Under religion, he wrote Krishnite. And under comments, he wrote very spiritual. From Amritsar, we returned with Srila Prabhupada by train to Bombay. At a stopover in Delhi, we were met at the station by D.D. Gupta, a lawyer, with whom Prabhupada had been corresponding. While they were speaking, Mr. Gupta requested Prabhupada to leave some disciples in Delhi to begin activities there. Prabhupada turned to Guru Das, who had been riding in his compartment, and said, "This man is inviting us. He says he has a place for you to stay, and he knows of a temple where you can have programs. Get down and see what you can do." He gave Guru Das 50 rupees and told him, "Try and start a temple in Delhi. It is the capital of India and very important." Guru Das asked for some devotees, and he and Prabhupada agreed on a team. Yamuna, Gopal, Bhakta Bruce, and me. So we detrained, and as Prabhupada's train pulled away, we offered our obeisances to him outside his window and then waved, praying for his mercy. So that's another chapter, Delhi, but it's sort of, gives a hint of what followed after Amritsar. So thank you for listening so patiently and attentively. And now if any of you have any questions or comments, you can raise your hand. Yes.
Can I ask?
Hare Krishna.
We have heard that Srila Prabhupada will chant 64 rounds.
Sorry?
We have heard that Srila Prabhupada will chant 64 rounds every day. But in Prabhupada's biography, we don't find such detailed description how and when he would chant 64 rounds in a day. Could you please clarify?
You're saying that you heard that Srila Prabhupada chanted 64 rounds?
Yes.
But you don't read about that in the...
Srila Prabhupada's biography, we don't find that description much how and when he would chant 64 rounds in a day.
Yes. At one stage, Srila Prabhupada did chant 64 rounds a day, but after he began ISKCON, he was so busy with preaching and writing and counseling that he reduced his quota to 16. And for some time, as a grihasta also, he kept his quota as 16. And he said that he would be sure to chant 4 before breakfast. He would be sure to chant 4 before lunch. He would be sure to chant 4 before dinner. And he would be sure to chant 4 before taking rest at night. And he explained that way he ensured that he would always complete his 16 rounds. So, yes, during some periods he did chant 64, and during other periods he chanted 16 as his minimum.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
It was so sweet to hear all this. Thank you so much. Maharaj, you mentioned about the Mayavadi sannyasi who bowed down to Srila Prabhupada. Did he leave his Mayavad ways after that? Did he become a devotee?
Oh. That Mayavadi, who was defeated by Guru Das, who had said that the thread and the blanket are the same, and then Guru Das took the blanket and gave him a thread and said, here's your thread, it's all the same. And then after an hour of shivering in the cold, he came back to Guru Das and said, "You've defeated me. I surrender to you." And Guru Das said, "Don't bow down to me, bow down to my teacher, Srila Prabhupada, who taught me." So did he become a devotee? I think in a way he did. He never joined ISKCON as such, but I think in a way he did become a devotee and give up his impersonal Mayavad idea by the grace of Srila Prabhupada and Prabhupada's disciple Guru Das. Yeah, it was a turning point for that Mayavadi. But there was a Mayavadi who did join and become a devotee in Indore. Srila Prabhupada went to Indore for the Gita Jayanti celebrations there at Gita Bhavan. And there was a sannyasi who joined. And we asked Srila Prabhupada, what do we do with this sannyasi now? And Srila Prabhupada said that he should live as a brahmachari, not as a sannyasi. And so that devotee did. And he became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. Yes?
Hare Krishna. Very grateful to you, Maharaj, for taking us along with you with Srila Prabhupada in Amritsar. Very grateful to you for his association. My question is about the prasadam distribution, which Prabhupada was quite impressed seeing the whole management and organization, and he commenting to be experienced, very spiritual. So my question is, I was hearing one class by His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaja, where he quoted Srila Prabhupada's letter to all temple presidents, requesting them to distribute prasadam constantly in temples to 20 people. And he is telling the menu also, what it should be, puri and sabji, and then it can be halwa and pakoda also. And Prabhupada is even writing that there should be 2 cooks for this, and he is giving a lot of managerial things in the letter, saying that prasad remains and then it can be taken by the devotees at the end. So this is what the letter he was reading, and in the Dadati Pratyunati verse. So my question is, Maharaj, that we see that a lot of preaching is happening, a lot of book distribution is happening, a lot of prasad distribution is also happening. But this letter, how do we take this letter? Because when Maharaj was saying that I don't see this happening. So how do we take up this letter of Srila Prabhupada, where he is very clearly telling all these details? And he is using must word maybe around 2-3 times in the letter. So how do we take this up?
As you said, we are distributing prasad. So what is it in the letter that we're not taking up?
Means what I understood, what Maharaj said was that it is from morning till whole time, all the time, anyone comes, they should be served, and menu is puri and sabji. And if possible, you should add pakoda and halwa also. So all these things from morning till evening. And we see, this is my personal observation in our temple, that saying like this mic is very easy, but it's quite tough to manage. We need to have a lot of systems of restricting prasadam and etc. So very difficult for me to digest the Prabhupada desire.
If you can do it, well and good. But when Srila Prabhupada really wanted something, he would repeat it again and again. And this is not something he repeated. He said it once, and it's valid, but he didn't repeat it, and therefore I don't think it's something that he was really insisting that we do. Yes, there's a few more.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you so much for guiding us and taking us through this tour of Amritsar, along with Srila Prabhupada. Maharaj, as we read through this book, Jugu story, and also the pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, which very mercifully you are giving to us, my question is that when we see Srila Prabhupada as a very, kind of personality coming from a different planet with having different energies, and how
as a person coming
from a spiritual platform, on a spiritual platform,
yeah,
and he is having very superhuman energies, which is very difficult to take in our lives. When we see Srila Prabhupada working from 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. and still working on and on. So but when we try to read through these pastimes, what is those lessons that we need to take in our lives so that we can become a proper true follower of Srila Prabhupada?
Yes, Srila Prabhupada was the Acharya, founder Acharya, but Acharya, which means one who teaches by example. And so we can learn from Srila Prabhupada's example how we should serve as devotees. may not be Shaktivesh avatars like Srila Prabhupada was. Shaktivesh means empowered incarnation. He was an empowered incarnation. And it is stated in scripture, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tara Pravartana. Without being empowered by Krishna, one cannot spread the holy names all over the world. So Srila Prabhupada was definitely empowered by Krishna. In different places, he himself has acknowledged the fact that he was empowered by Krishna, because Krishna Shakti Vina Nahi Tara Pravartana. Without being empowered by Krishna, one cannot spread the holy names all over the world. And we should follow, his example to our capacity. We're not Srila Prabhupada, but we're his followers. And so we should follow his example and his instructions. And we'll be able to do great service to the Lord and to humanity.
Basically, we have limitations with our body, with our mind. So how do we work on that so that we can actually follow what Prabhupada set example as?
Well, good chanting of japa is very important for our service in general. When I was the temple president in Juhu and had to face so many challenges, I got great strength, and strength means intelligence, from my japa. So if you can chant a good, attentive rounds and really hear yourself chanting, as Srila Prabhupada said, just try to hear yourself chanting sincerely. You'll be able to overcome your limitations or apparent limitations. And the chanting is a prayer. O Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. So when we chant, we're praying for service, and if we chant nicely, Krishna will reciprocate and reward us with more service. So, I think the chanting is the key.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Yes.
Please accept my most humble obeisances at your divine lotus feet. I have heard about your glories, about the kind of cooking you used to do from my spiritual teacher, and then who has accepted the prasadam offered by you has exited the planet, that's what he said. And also about the Charanamrita distribution. So my question to you is, how, because this is related to the past time where you concluded that few devotees, especially Prabhupada chose one strong devotee amongst the group and gave him a service and said, you have to build a temple in Delhi, and he dropped him there. And from there his journey is going to be alone. So he used his intelligence, or he prayed to Krishna, and he got a group of devotees like yourself, Jamuna Mataji and few others, and he formed a group and he continues the service. So my question to you is, how to make the order of a spiritual master our life and soul? He gives order, he gives some instruction, he is moved on, he's gone to some other service, and you may not see him for a while, or maybe never, you don't know. So how to make our spiritual master's instruction our life and soul, even in his not his Vani may be there, but his physical presence is not there, and how to continue. If, say for example, in the group of devotee, if I am the stronger one. How do I take others forward, as well as focus on my spiritual master's instruction as the life and souls. So that's my humble request. If you could please throw some light on this particular thing.
I didn't catch the last point. You said as well. Yeah, we want to focus on our spiritual master's instruction. And then what did you say?
The spiritual master has given some instruction, and he has given a couple of devotees, like your dependents, maybe your family, and he has asked you to take care of them, plus at the same time, given you certain instructions to follow, some service. Like in your case, it was to have a temple in Delhi. So some specific devotee may have some service. So how do I execute that order, as well as take care of people whose consciousness is still to be uplifted, who are under my care?
The essence of the relationship with the spiritual master is to serve the orders of the spiritual master. And as Srila Prabhupada wrote in his dedication to Srimad Bhagavatam, dedicated to His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he lives forever by his divine instruction, and the follower lives with him. So as long as we're following the instructions of the spiritual master, we are with him, and he is with us. And we have many things to do. Some things were not ordered directly by the spiritual master, but they fall within the general instructions of the spiritual master. And so we follow those. We do those things. I'm not sure if I quite got your question or answered your question, but... I think you did. So basically my thing was that when spiritual master is not there, I think you said that it's his instruction. The Vani is what we have to invite. Because you had a very great service, and the spiritual master gave it on the spot, spontaneously inspired by Krishna, and he left you from there. So that is my question. If certain situation arises in somebody's life where you are very nicely doing under the care of your spiritual master, and you the next day know the spiritual master is going for some other service, and you are alone on your own, and you have this huge responsibility, and you don't know when you're going to see him next. So that was the essence. You quite answered it. But if you want to say something more, I'm more than happy to hear. Yes, well, Srila Prabhupada, because we also can consult others, and Srila Prabhupada said that if a group of devotees who are mature in Krishna consciousness and who are your well-wishers give you an instruction, you should take it that it is coming from Krishna. So we can get ongoing guidance from the Vaishnavas, and of course also from the Lord within the heart. And in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a beautiful description of the departure of the spiritual master in the story of the king and his widow, and Srila Prabhupada explains that figuratively the king is the spiritual master, and the wife or the widow is the disciple. And he discusses the practice of the wife perishing in the funeral pyre of her husband, called Sahamarana. And, for example, Prabhupada gives the example that after Maharaj Pandu died, he had two wives, Madri and Kunti. And so there was a question whether they both should die within the fire or only one should die. And it was concluded that only one should die, that was Madri, and that Kunti would remain to take care of the children, the 5 Pandavas. So Srila Prabhupada says that the lesson we can learn from this is that one should be prepared to give up one's life for the spiritual master, but what that really means is one should be prepared to do whatever the spiritual master wants without any personal consideration. And and then later anyway, it's a very important section of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 28, and it deals specifically with the departure of the spiritual master, and I highly recommend that every devotee should study that section, because it's filled with very powerful and relevant instructions. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful class. Maharaj, as you were, when you were at Juhu, that time you were temple president, you were a brahmachari, that time. So, and so many things were happening, so much management, so many coordination, so much standards to be maintained, because everything comes on temple president, especially that time. So, Maharaj, how you would manage your sadhana in the sense of reading Prabhupada books and having, otherwise the things keep coming. There is sometimes it feels there is no end to it. So, how you could manage your Prabhupada book reading that time? Sorry, because sometimes we feel same thing kind of our life. So, I just want to know about this, Maharaj.
You're asking how I manage my sadhana with so much service to do? Yes. I had a very instructive exchange with Srila Prabhupada in Calcutta. I said, Srila Prabhupada, now you're here, so everything is going nicely. But what if in the future, when you're not here, ISKCON falls from the standard? And Srila Prabhupada replied, you are also one of the important members of the society, which I didn't particularly think I was, because I was quite new then. But he replied, you are also one of the important members of the society, so you work for the correction, but don't leave. So also in Calcutta, Srila Prabhupada was keeping us so busy that I hardly had time to read. And I felt guilty about it. And one day when I was in Srila Prabhupada's room, I didn't say anything, but he must have read my mind. So he brought up about reading. And he quoted the verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text, I believe, 18. Nasta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakti bhagati naistiki. And he said that by serving the person Bhagavat or by reading the book Bhagavat, one gets the same result. And then he directly told me, if you serve the person Bhagavat, all the truths of the book Bhagavat will be revealed, even if you do not read the book. So he was encouraging me to continue with my service and, not to worry about not having time to read his books, because he kept us so busy with service. But of course, under ordinary circumstances, we should read Srila Prabhupada's books. In so many letters, he's asked us to read his books 1 hour a day, 3 hours a day. So under ordinary circumstances, we should read. But in extraordinary circumstances, such as when we were with Srila Prabhupada in India, and he was keeping us so busy with service, he encouraged us in that way, that if you simply serve the person Bhagavat, all the truths of the book Bhagavat will be revealed, even if you don't read the book. Yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you Maharaj for your time and association. My question is, Maharaj, like you mentioned that good chanting is very important for having a nice service. But I see personally in my life that sometimes the chanting is very nice, sometimes it is not good. While chanting, I'm understanding that I'm not able to hear the mantra. But there may be many reasons that taking rest late, otherwise some physically very exhausted previous day. So my question is that these things are not in my hand, like whatever is happening in previous day. But while, so how to maintain very nice chanting all throughout the days, whatever, every time how can we chant nicely? So that is my question. Any practical tips?
Of course, it's ideal to chant early in the morning before one begins one's day's activities. And one's mind should be free to focus on the chanting. One of my god brothers, very good devotee named Gopal Bhatta Das, is a big businessman, and he told me that one thing he does to help his japa is he maintains a very comprehensive to-do list. Because often when we chant japa, we think of all the things we have to do. And then that distracts us. So, as a service to his japa, he keeps a very comprehensive to-do list, so that while he's chanting japa, he doesn't have to think, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. It's already recorded in his notes. And of course, rising early and chanting in front of Tulsi Devi, chanting in front of deities, chanting with other sincere and serious chanters, all of those help. And there are many wonderful books about japa. Giriraj Prabhupada has written one book, and the title of the book is just Japa. And by reading these books, Sachinandan Swami has also written a number of books about japa. So that these books can also help guide you. But yeah, Giriraj Prabhupada makes the point that you can chant any time of the day or night. And that's good. You chant as much as possible. And another point he makes, which is so relevant, he says that the mind will always tell you there are more important things to do than chant japa. So when my mind starts telling me that, I think, is it really more important now than japa? And it's usually not. So yeah, japa is important. We should, again, do as much as we can in the morning, but we can chant anytime, and we should chant at all times as far as possible.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Who just said Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Okay. Oh, there's another Hare Krishna. Surrounded by Hare Krishnas.
Thank you for sharing your sweet memories with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. My question was, can you share that pastime when your parents first met Srila Prabhupada and that incidents of your father with the car of Srila Prabhupada?
The incident of my father.
Your father seeing the car of Srila Prabhupada.
Oh, yeah, well, those are two different times. When my parents met Srila Prabhupada. One time they met him in Calcutta, and it was quite an interesting conversation between my father and Srila Prabhupada. And basically my father wanted me to come back to America. And he said that he wanted to establish a trust for me, a fund for me, and put $1 million in it, which back then, in the early 70s, was even much more than it is now, even. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, you can send the documents, and he will sign. And but still, you know, my parents wanted me to come back to America. And my mother, in particular, was concerned about my health. Because back then, many people had the idea that if you don't eat meat, you can't get enough protein. And Srila Prabhupada had on his table, I mean, he'd generally keep sweets on his table, keep prasad to distribute. And being Calcutta, you know, he had sandesh, rasgulla. And so he gave some to my parents. And he said that these sweets are made of cheese, and they're very high in protein. And then he said to me, Giriraj, you must eat 24 rasgulla and sandesh every day. Which I'm working on it, I'm not there yet. And then, just on this thread, after Calcutta, I went to Madras. I was the first devotee from ISKCON to go to Madras. And we didn't have a center. I was staying at different people's homes and eating nicely. And I put on weight. When my parents saw me in Calcutta, I was quite thin. But I put on weight. And when Srila Prabhupada came to Madras, he said I should take a picture of myself and send it to my mother. So, yeah, he hadn't forgotten. But anyway, so coming back to the meeting in Calcutta, again, my parents wanted me to come to America. And I said, well, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, I'm free to go. And I said, well, I want to stay with Srila Prabhupada. My parents were still concerned. And then Srila Prabhupada said, when I come to America, I'll bring him with me. And I said to my father, just see how intelligent Srila Prabhupada is, that when it's the winter in the West, and it's very cold and unpleasant, Srila Prabhupada spends his time in India, where it's very pleasant in the winter. And then in the summer, when it's pleasant in the West and uncomfortable in India, Srila Prabhupada goes to America. So by this time, my father was getting very enlivened by Srila Prabhupada. And he said, your master is very intelligent. And Srila Prabhupada said, your son is very intelligent because he has understood my strategy. And then my father said, no, actually you are very intelligent. And Srila Prabhupada said, well, I guess I must be, otherwise how could I attract so many intelligent young men like your son? So, all in all, my parents were charmed, and as we were leaving the room, my father said to me, I can say two things about your master. One, he's a brilliant organizer, and two, he really knows how to deal with people. And in my father's value system, those are like the two highest compliments he could give to anyone. So that was Calcutta. Then later, in 1973, my health deteriorated in India, and eventually Srila Prabhupada said, as long as I stay in Bombay, won't be able to get better, and so I should return to America. So I did. I went first to Chicago, where my parents were, and I spent a little time there. And then I went to Los Angeles. And after some time, my parents came to visit me in Los Angeles. And they came with Srila Prabhupada on a morning walk at Cheviot Hills Park. And on the walk, Srila Prabhupada said to my mother, oh, Mrs. Titan, you look so young, which made her happy. And but then coming to the point about the car, so at the end of the walk, we returned to the parking lot. And there was a Rolls Royce waiting for Srila Prabhupada. And so my father was sort of looking at the Rolls Royce. And Srila Prabhupada very humbly and diffidently, sort of in a shy way, he said, my disciples have gotten this for me. And my father said, no, you deserve it, you deserve it. And then Prabhupada said, if you want, you can ride with me. And my father said, no, that's all right, we have our own vehicle, but thank you. And then afterwards, Srila Prabhupada's servant said to him, Srila Prabhupada, everyone likes you so much. And Prabhupada replied, yes, because I like everyone. So, yeah, that was the story of the car. Any other questions or comments? Oh, yes, at the side.
Maharaj, you were talking about being absorbed in chanting. So, my own spiritual master, His Holiness Loknath Swami, he had once said about your chanting. When he had just newly joined the Juhu temple, and some very important guests had arrived and they wanted to meet with you. And Guru Maharaj came running up to your room and you were chanting. And very excitedly he told you, these big people are waiting down for you. And you just said, tell them I'll meet them later, I'm busy. And Guru Maharaj thought, you're just chanting, you're not busy. And then he said, it took me 30 years to realize that you were actually busy at that time.
Yes, thank you for sharing that with us. Yes, I remember that. Yes.
I had this question since many years. This question is regarding discussing about japa and japa. There are so many books written by Prabhupada himself. So my question is this, I am trying to understand that we see after Prabhupada there are so many books written about japa, whereas Prabhupada in his lectures and his conversation doesn't appear to directly say so much in condensed way about particular activity called japa. And if we see the previous acharyas, we see Harinam Chintamani is the book, which is not much speaking about the mental adjustments we have to do during chanting. Whereas it is talking about the offenses and philosophy part of it. So my question which keeps on coming in my mind is that how to understand this? How to understand that these books have come so much by Prabhupada's disciples. They are very beautiful books. I have not read all of them, but I have heard about them. So, how to understand that? Is it that this part is the most important? That's what is the case. How do I understand this? Because nobody.
Yes. Well, what you said is true. But there is a book, I think called The Glories of the Holy Name, or The Nectar of the Holy Name, which is all quotations from Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, Namamrita.
Yes, that we read in this.
Nectar of the Holy Name. So Srila Prabhupada spoke a lot about it, and as far as the disciples writing books, as Prabhupada said in general, I've given you the framework, now you have to fill it in. So in a way we could say they're filling in the literature about japa. And yes, Srila Prabhupada spoke a lot about japa. Now, what exactly is your question?
Just to some of the books talk about the glories of the holy name in a very philosophical way and from references from many other scriptures like Sandarbhajana. And there are many books which talk about the mental adjustments which needs to be done while chanting.
You mean to focus the mind on here?
Yeah. Yes. And details of it, reflections and so many things, what we should be doing after every mantra, etc. So, my question is that attention can come one by this way of artificially trying to control the mind, which is 6th chapter, Bhagavad Gita. Yato Nishchalati. Whereas in Bhakti section, Krishna is telling about if you know this knowledge, then attention is a side effect. Like the attention which is coming by awareness is what given between 7th and 12th chapters. That is my personal understanding. So that was my question. It appears to me with my little intelligence that this artificial way of trying to adjust the mind is one way to adjust, but being aware about whose name we are chanting is what given in Bhagavad Gita. So that's why I am not able to understand why there are so many books in this direction.
Well, that's good. As I mentioned, we're actually calling out to Radha and Krishna, and so we should chant in a prayerful mood. And when there's feeling, then we would more naturally be absorbed in hearing, and we wouldn't have to make so much of an effort in the mechanical process of, like you said, wherever and whenever the mind wanders, you have to bring it back under the control of the self. So that's good. And another thing, in the early days of ISKCON, when I joined, Srila Prabhupada had instituted reading Krishna book at night before the devotees took rest. And once I was giving a japa retreat in New Vrindavan, and I mentioned that point, that if you read Krishna book at night, or some similar book, then in the morning when you chant japa, it's natural that you'll think of Krishna's pastimes, which enriches the experience of the japa. We should still be focused on hearing. That's always there, to be focused on hearing. But as Srila Prabhupada said, beginning with the name, nama, then rupa, the form, guna, the qualities, lila, the pastimes, they all become manifest. So it's a great art. And also, as Srila Prabhupada said, practice makes perfect, even in spiritual life. So if we practice chanting, by Prabhupada and Krishna's grace, eventually we can become perfect. But we should chant. All right. So what's next?
Hare Krishna, we would like to thank His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaja. Maharaj just came to Pune for 2 days, and today and tomorrow, today he gave class here, and tomorrow we'll have his association at NVCC temple. So let us thank Maharaj by chanting one time Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Maharaj's books are here at display, and Maharaj, if anybody wants to have the books, they want to buy the books, they can come on the stage here. and also receive personal autograph from Maharaj. Also, one more announcement was there. The angiography procedure on His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, he is admitted to the Fortis Hospital at New Delhi, and by 12 o'clock in the afternoon, at the noon, the angiography procedure will begin. Devotees are requested to pray for Maharaj's good health and a successful surgery. That procedure goes on between 12 to 4, from 12 noon to 4 p.m. and devotees could chant and pray to the Lordships that Maharaj recovers his health and once again will have his association. So devotees could pray for him. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. The prasadam is there for all the devotees. The counter is ready there. So please honor prasadam and then only leave. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
He sent it for you.